أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والحمد لله رب العالمين، ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، سيدنا وسندنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين الذين كلامهم نور وأمرهم رشد ووصيتهم التقوى وفعلهم الخير وعادتهم الإحسان وسجيتهم الكرم، لا سيما على الحسين المظلوم المقتول المجروح الأدشاني المذبوح من القفا في يوم عاشوراء في أرض كربلاء بلا جرم ولا خطأ، الذي غسله دمه وكفنه رمال كربلاء. يا ليتنا كنا معكم فنفوز فوزا عظيما. اللهم صل على محمد. قال الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. صلوات. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the 155th verse of Surah Al-Baqarah says: وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ. That we will verily test you in different ways. We will test you with fear and hunger and loss of your life and loss of your wealth and loss of your fruits. However, there are those people that when we test them with these masa'ib and these tragedies, they are patient, they are of the sabirin. And when they are given any type of tragedy or masa'ib or difficulty in this life, they say, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. That surely we belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to Him we shall return. An analysis of these 2 or 3 verses, beginning with 155 of Surah Al-Baqarah, we understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in many different verses of Quran and different ideas presented in Quran al-Kareem speaks about this issue of imtihan and ikhtibar and ibtila and bala. All of these having different meanings but also having the same connotations. And so the first question comes: what was meant when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ, that surely we will give you this bala and test? For yes, in English we will call it test. However, bala is one word in English, in Arabic. There is also ibtila, there is also ikhtibar. What was the meaning of bala? And why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not say ikhtibar or not say imtihan? We are told these 2 words, bala and ibtila, have the same meaning, whereas ikhtibar has a different meaning. Ikhtibar, ibtila, in English we would translate them as the same thing, a test. However, in Arabic, if you were to understand what each of these mean, we are told that with regards to bala and ibtila, this is when we are tested with a tragedy or a sorrow. For example, someone passes away in my family, or I have problems with my health. This is called ibtila. In other words, ibtila and bala equal imtihan. Whereas ikhtibar in Arabic refers to testing with a bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Certain tests are from tragedies and sorrows and problems. Certain tests are from the na'ma of Allah, the benefits of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That Allah, for example, gave you children. These can also be your tests, even though they are bounties. Therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this verse was not referring to those tests from the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rather, He was referring to those tests and that imtihan from those things which are negative and bring about sorrow. And so we are told that وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوءِ, that we will give you this bala. This means we will give you imtihan. And if you look at this word imtihan in Arabic, originally this word imtihan came where? This word imtihan, during the time of these Arabs and the time the Quran was revealed, they would have gold with them. And when someone finds a bar of gold, a piece of gold, an ore of gold, of course it was mixed with purity and impurity. It wasn't a pure piece of gold. So what they would do is they would take this piece of gold and they would warm it up to such a level and such a temperature that the impurities would naturally be removed from the purity. In other words, when I find a piece of gold or I give someone a piece of gold and he wants to purify it, what does he do? He takes it, he warms it up to a certain temperature until naturally the impurities are removed. This action of the heating and the removal of impurity was called what in Arabic? Imtahana. In other words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word for test as the same word. That in the way that I will warm up a piece of gold and metal to remove its impurities, Allah says, I gave you tests. Why? The reason why these tests were given is in the name, imtihan, to remove the impurities in the soul of the human being. And that's why when a person is a believer, أَحَسِبَ النَّاسِ أَن يُتْرَكُوا أَن يَقُولُوا آمَنَّا وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ, that when a person is a believer, he will always be tested in this world. This is a sign. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that the believers, the mu'mineen, have impurities in their soul. They commit sins. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes that the believer will purify himself, and He makes imtihan a means. And that's why the Imam such as Imam Sajjad, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, would say that the believer at least once every 40 days will have some sort of imtihan, even if it be the slightest one. A headache also is part of this imtihan and ikhtibar and bala. I missed the train. This is also something, a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of these things were given to the human being and the mu'min at least once every 40 days. And with regards to this, that the mu'min always goes through this test, there's a hadith, we are told, mentioned in Al-Kafi of Kulaini, that the Prophet of Islam sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, once, as we know, it was the etiquette of the people of Medina that every single day, every other day, or a lot of the times, they would come and they would invite the Prophet of Islam to their household for dinner or for lunch. And the companions that were surrounding the Prophet of Islam were also invited. Because there were certain companions all of the time, wherever the Prophet of Islam goes, these companions are there. And so when the mu'mineen, as is great thawab to invite each other for dinner or lunch or food, the mu'mineen would invite the Prophet of Islam that, Ya Rasulullah, tomorrow lunch at my house, tomorrow dinner at my house. And they knew that when he comes, there will be 5 or 6 other people with him who are part of the companions that were with him at the time in Medina, in the masjid. So right enough, a person says, Ya Rasulullah, after Salatul Dhuhr, come to my house with your people, we'll have lunch together. And the Prophet of Islam, as we know, as his etiquette is, he is given a gift, he accepts it. He is given an invitation, he accepts it. So he enters into the house, and the house had a courtyard. And the person, what he had done is that he had taken all of the food from inside of the house and placed it on a type of cloth in the courtyard. So all are sitting in this courtyard, and he says, Ya Rasulullah, I'll just go and get something from inside, then we'll start the meal. Now the companions were sitting there, and there was a wall. Naturally, houses have walls. There's a wall. And on top of the wall was sitting a hen, a chicken. And they're watching it. Now, as the person is inside, suddenly that hen lays an egg. A few meters above, the egg begins to drop. And there was something in between the wall, or something happened, that the egg touched the ground or didn't touch the ground, whatever it was, but the egg did not break. So either it got stuck in something in between the wall, or it hit the ground and it did not break. Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah. What a great act has taken place, the companion said. As they were saying this, the person came back. He says, why are you saying subhanallah? What's happened? Why are you doing tasbih? Why are you praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? They said, don't you know this egg fell, it didn't crack. Alhamdulillah, you have barakah in your house that your egg did not break. He said, oh companions and Ya Rasulullah, this is nothing new. In my life, never do I lose anything, never do I lose money, never does an egg break in my house, never do these things happen in my house. The Prophet of Islam stood up and said, I can't eat in this person's house. Because the fact that he is not tested even in this minute way is a sign that Iman is not found in his qalb and heart. Because when a person is a mu'min, Allah says, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ. Whether it's through hunger, whether it is through fear, loss of life, loss of wealth, loss of fruits, which I will explain afterwards what that means. In whatever way it may be, Allah says imtihan was a source of purifying the believer. Which is why we understand that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a believer and a mu'min a test, if that mu'min passes that test, the impurity within him is removed. Because as you know, for example, even imtihanat in schools, when a person is tested, why? So that the impurity is removed from the purity of the student. The impurity of ignorance is distinguished from the purity of the student's knowledge. When a person is tested by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he passes that test, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always raises up his servant. That when Nabiullah Ibrahim is tested, وَإِذِ ابْتَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ رَبُّهُ بِكَلِمَاتٍ فَأَتَمَّهُنْ قَالَ إِنِّي جَاعِلُكَ لِلنَّاسِ Imama, when Ibrahim is made an Imam, when is he given this gift and lofty status? After being tested by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whichever person therefore is tested, this is a sign of Iman. If they pass the test, they should understand. If they are patient with these tests, always Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gifts the servant with certain gifts. Sometimes people ask the question, why is it that our maraji reach such a lofty status, such a great status in their life? Their ilm is such at a high level and piety, and all of the world is given to them even though they don't want it. The answer is simple. Bashir as-sabirin. Give good news to those who are patient. When a person is tested by Allah and he is patient, Allah gives good news of tidings, good tidings, glad tidings, a lofty status. For example, Ayatollah Khoi rahmatullahi alayhi, one of his students who is Marja of Taqleed currently in Najaf al-Ashraf, Ayatollah Fayyad, he mentions, his son mentions actually, that Sayyid Khoi once had said that when he first came to Najaf al-Ashraf in the city of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, of course he lives far away. He's not from Najaf al-Ashraf. To be far away from your family in a new city where you know no one, there's difficulty. So when Sayyid Khoi, now his father Sayyid Ali Akbar Khoi was also an alim deen. When he enters into Najaf al-Ashraf, the month of Shahr Ramadan comes. In the heat of Najaf al-Ashraf, in the dry climate of Najaf al-Ashraf, he says, I spent away from my family. Shahr Ramadan is a time normally people want to be with their families. Sayyid Khoi says, I was away from my family. Shahr Ramadan came. After 30 days, he said, I've had enough. I said, why? He says, because every single day, the poverty was at such a level that all I had for iftar was 1 cup of tea and a biscuit. After 30 days, he said, I can't live like this. I'll go to Mashhad, I'll go back to Iran. I can't stay here. It's too difficult for me. So Sayyid Khoi says, I decided, I had made the mind up that I'm going to leave. Mashhad, Qom, other places are there for me to study. Why study here? There's so much difficulty and trial from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Says, the day I decided to leave, I went to my teacher to tell him that, Shaykhna, Sayyidna, whatever, I've had enough. Says, I entered in, and before I could tell him that I'm leaving tomorrow back home, he said, Abul Qasim, this Shahr Ramadan has been very difficult. So I stopped, what is he saying? He said, Abul Qasim, it's been very difficult, but we thank Allah. I said, why? He said, because all I had for iftar every single day was 1 cup of tea. Said Khoi says, at least I had 1 extra thing with me. So I decided to stay in Najaf al-Ashraf. And I decided to be patient with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's when someone becomes a'lam of his time, that he was one of the greatest scholars from Ghaybatul Kubra till today, Ghaybatul Sughra till today. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. Give good news to those people who are patient when we give them imtihan, and this imtihan removes the impurities in their soul. The question then comes with regards to this verse is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you are just, why did you say وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوءِ وَنَقْصٍ مِنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ? Why did you mention all of these things? Why is it that one person is tested by one thing and another is tested by something else? Ya Allah, if you have adala and justice, say we will test you all with loss of wealth. We will test you all with loss of your children or health or something like that. Why did you have to say we will test you with all of these 5 things? Why are there differences between the human being? Sometimes people have in their mind that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been very unjust with me, that He tested me with this problem. Why did another person not be tested with this problem? Sometimes we doubt the hikmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but we need to understand the hikmah of God is something that is very difficult for the human being to understand. The human being's eyes are closed. There are veils in front of his eyes. He can't understand certain things. Why was I not given a son and someone else was given a son? Why was I not given a daughter and someone else was given a daughter? Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not increase my risk even though I tried? These are all tests, but they will be different because Allah's hikmah can only be understood by Allah Himself and those close to Him. That's why some of the scholars mentioned that there was one alim deen sitting with his students, and the students, they said, look, they all began a discussion. One said, if I had control of the earth for one day, if Allah gave me the control of the earth for one day, I would make sure that there is no poverty on this earth. Second said, if I had control of this earth for one day, I would make sure that there was no sickness on this earth. So the alim deen is listening. One said this, one said that, a third said. They said, Shaykhna, what do you think? He said, if I had control over this earth for one day, I would change nothing because I know my Allah is Hakim and wise. I may think this is unjust, that's why one person is unwell and why another person is given health and prosperity in his life. But in actual fact, this is the hikmah of Allah that sometimes we can't understand. If I had my power of the world for one day, I would change nothing because my Allah is Hakim. My Allah is the wisest of the wise. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ, that we will give you this imtihan. If we have then understood with regards to this verse that imtihan is there to remove the impurities in the soul of the believer, the question then comes, why then are Anbiya and A'imma and Ahlul Bayt tested? I said that imtihan comes when imtihan comes. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Imtihan comes when there is impurity in the soul of a believer. So why are Ahlul Bayt then going through imtihan? Astaghfirullah, there's impurity in their souls. 100% purity, ma'soom. Why then were the ma'soomeen given this imtihan? For example, if you go to Madinatul Munawwara, as we know, there are 3 or 4 different riwayat of where Sayyidul Zahra, salamullahi alayha, is buried. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Some ulama and some riwayat mention, and as we know, we don't know. We only know when Sahib Zaman comes and he tells us this is the grave of my grandmother. Some say that in between the mimbar of the Prophet of Islam and his grave, there is the piece of Jannah, Rawdatun min Riyadil Jannah. There are certain pieces of Jannah on this earth that when Qiyamah will come, they will raise up and return back to Jannah. One is that piece in between the grave and the mimbar of the Prophet of Islam. One is Karbala, for example. And that's why a poet says that when Karbala raises up to the Jannah, the land may move, but I will never move from the door of Hussein. These are pieces that will be returned to the paradise. According to some scholars and riwayat, one of the places that we are told she is buried is in between that place, in Rawdatun min Riyad al-Jannah. If you go today, you will see lines of people wanting to recite at least 2 units of prayer in that area. Other riwayat say no, she is buried in her house, right next to the grave of the Prophet of Islam. On the other side is the room of Az-Zahra. A third riwayah says in Baqi, and some even say in Baytul Huzn. In the ziyarah, and for each of these there is a separate ziyarah. So when a mu'min goes to do ziyarah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wa alihi and also does of Zahra, on all of these 3 or 4 places that he goes, he can recite its own ziyarah. In the ziyarah of Az-Zahra, in between the minbar and the grave of the Prophet, Rawdatun min Riyad al-Jannah, there's ziyarah. Where Imam Jawad says, Ya mumtahana tumtahanakillah, alladhi khalaqaki qabla an yakhluqak. That, oh, the one that was tested by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, imtihan. Ya mumtahana tumtahanakillah, the one who tested you before you came into this world and found you to be sabira, fawajadaki sabira. We said imtihan comes when there is impurity, when there is disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So why is it then that Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam go through imtihan, and A'imma and Anbiya go through imtihan? The answer is clear. We said when the gold has impurity, you warm it up. But sometimes that person who deals with these metals will give the heat to that metal to show that there is no impurity found within it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I tested Ahlul Bayt. Why? To show the whole world. I tested them and there is no disobedience found within Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Because otherwise someone would say, Ya Allah, you didn't test Zahra, so how do we know she is ma'sooma? You didn't test Abu Abdullah, so how do we know he is ma'soom? Allah says, I tested them to show you the purity that was within their soul. And that's why As-Sadiq salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, he has a hadith where he says, on the day of Qiyamah, a woman will come. And Allah will say to her, why did you commit sin? She's very beautiful. Why did you commit sin? She will say, Ya Allah, you made me beautiful. Blame Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ya Allah, you made me beautiful. You gave me this test, ikhtibar, test through bounty. You made me beautiful. That's why I sinned. So then Allah says, Maryam, come forward. And Allah says, who is more beautiful, Maryam or this woman? All say Maryam is more beautiful. Did you sin, Ya Maryam? She says, no. Then the woman, Allah tells her, you have no excuse. Allah tests the ma'soomeen for this reason, to show people that it is possible to reach those heights that you are tested by all ibtila'at and imtihanat and ikhtibarat, yet still you don't commit an act of disobedience. Then a person comes forward, why did you sin? I was very beautiful, Ya Allah, I sinned. A man. Allah says, Yusuf, come forward. Who is more beautiful? Nabiullah Yusuf. Did he commit sin? No, you have no excuse. A third person comes, why did you commit sin? He said, because you gave me so many issues and imtihan and suffering in this world that I committed sin. You made me lose my wealth and my health wasn't good and my wife or my husband was giving me problems. So Allah says, Ayyub, come forward. Who was given more trials in this world? I say, Ayyub alayhi salam. So Allah says, then you have no excuse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam for this reason, so that we understood it is possible to be of the Sabirin. It's possible to be of the patient ones. This verse in question therefore could be understood to be general, that we will test the people in these ways, and there are some people that are patient and others which are not patient. However, we also have riwayat which tell us that this verse actually can also be understood to be more specific. That yes, it is for all nations and all tribes and all people. However, it is also said to be more specific. Why? وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ. We will test the people during the occultation of their Imam in these ways. Sometimes people ask, what are the signs of Akhirul Zaman? Not reappearance, Akhirul Zaman. This verse, according to Imam As-Sadiq, are the signs of Akhirul Zaman where dhuhur is very close. That we will test the people with fear. The Imam says there will be a certain group of people that rule this world which will create fear in the hearts of the people. And Jew and hunger. The economic situation of the world will be such that there is hunger and loss of life and loss of wealth and loss of fruits. And then he says, what does Allah mean when he says, give good news to the ones who are patient? Bashir as-Sabirin. He said, give good news. In other words, give good news of the reappearance of the Imam to those that are Sabirin in the time of his ghaibah. In other words, yes, this verse may refer generally to all people in the times of the Aimma alayhim salam and the Prophet of Islam. However, it also referred to me and you directly, that these are the trials that we will be faced in during the time of Akhir al-Zaman. And those that are patient, Bashir al-Sabirin, give good news and glad tidings that I have been given these tests and imtihan and I have passed these tests. And this, therefore, the verse was for us to understand the concept of the philosophy of occultation and ghaiba. Often people ask, what is the philosophy of this ghaiba and occultation, that we are there without the imam? Why did this take place? Why didn't it happen for another imam before him? Why was it the 12th imam salamullah alayh for whom occultation took place? And why is it that I'm tested during these times? An example is given. This example is that, take the example, there's a very small town. The closest city is a few hundred kilometers away from it. And there are 4 or 5 or 6, 10 maximum, 10 families. They have no electricity. So when it comes to the summer times, okay, the days are long. They do whatever work they have to do in the daytime. And by nighttime they can rest. However, when it comes to the winter time, and the days are short, it becomes 4 o'clock, 4:30, 5 o'clock, they stop. We don't have electricity, these small candles aren't enough. We need some sort of light source. There are no resources for us here in this town in the middle of nowhere. So a few members of these 10 families, they decide to travel a few hundred kilometers to the nearest city. They said, we'll go there, we'll ask the mayor of that city if he can help us out in this problem, in this issue. So they traveled all the way there. And he said, look, there's only 10 of you. There's no point for me to give you electricity. It will take a long time, it's expensive, there's not enough of you. What I will do, however, is I'll fill up a truck with as much wood as possible. You take this, you put all of this wood in the middle of your few houses, and it will become like a bonfire. Set it alight, and this will have enough light and animate enough light for you in the darkness. There's no other way. No, this is the best way. So they accept. They take the truck, they go, and right enough, they put it in the middle of their few houses in the dark. Their light is emanating and they have enough light to do their work and do whatever. However, there were people in that community, some children, for no reason, they saw that it was there and they began to throw stones and water and they destroyed the whole thing. Back to square one, same problem again. So they did sabr and they were patient for a while. They went again. They went again to this man. What happened? He said, look, there were children in our community. They're not that well educated and we haven't really brought them up that well. They destroyed this. Can you give us another one? Another one. Second one was bought, same thing happened. We are told this happened 11 times. When it happened 11 times, they went again to that person. That person says, I only have one more. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. For the love of Sahibul Asri wal Zaman, second salawat. 11 times this took place, the 12th time they went. The person says, I only have one more to give you. First, make sure that your children will not destroy it, then I will give it to you. This is the exact example of our Islam. That Allah said, I gave you one light source called Ali ibn Abi Talib, you killed Ali ibn Abi Talib. We gave you the second, you killed the second. The third, you killed the third. Allah says, I'm not going to send you thousands of imams so you can keep killing them. First, make sure that your society will not kill the imam and will give the imam the right, then I will send that imam to you. I don't have 1,000 that every time I send one and you kill him. I will keep 12 only. And because the communities and the ummah of the Prophet of Islam kept on killing their imam and massacring their imams, Allah says, I have one left. First, make sure that in this period that the Quran mentions, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ, first make sure that you will not kill that imam. Then I will send him to you in his dhuhur. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this verse highlights very beautifully the responsibility of a person who wants to be able to hear that news of Sabirin. Give good news to the Sabirin. Because if a person wants to understand the reappearance of Sahib al-Zaman, we are told we have 313. 313, by the way, is not the number of all the people. Of course not. Some think that when 313 mu'mineen will come, then he will rise. No. 313 is the number of the generals of the army of Sahibul Asr. According to which ahadith say 50 of them will be women and the rest men. And there is not one place on this earth that at least one of these 313 will not be found. So in Najaf al-Ashraf, once there was a great alim deen, Ayatollah Sayyid Abul Hasan Isfahani. If you read about Ayatollah Sayyid Abul Hasan Isfahani, he had a very close relationship with Sahib al-Asri wal Zaman. And he would spend all of his nights, people would come to his house at 3 a.m. in the morning, and they would see his light is on, and they would see that the whole room is covered in questions. And a person came in once, and they said, "You look very busy." He said, "Look over there." So he said, "On the corner of the room, I saw food that was there." He said, "I came back from Maghrib, and I was very hungry. And I thought I will eat. But then I remembered that my Imam has given me certain responsibilities. So first, I will answer these questions, then I will eat." He said, "That was 4 or 5 hours ago, I'm still sitting here." Ayatollah Abul Hasan Isfahani had a very close relationship with Imam Zaman. One of his students says that once Sayyid Abul Hasan told us that when the 313 will be there, the number of 313, that's when our Imam will come. So the student said, "This doesn't make sense. Yes, the 313 are pious, but there are at least 1,000 of people who are worthy to be 313. It must be that Sayyid Abul Hasan has made a mistake. Because look, 313 is not a big number. They said we have this many mujtahideen in Najaf and this many ulama and this many students. They're not at the level of 313. So all of the students sat together and they said, look, maybe Sayyid Abul Hasan has made a mistake. So how can we tell him that he's made a mistake? Maybe he's got the number wrong. Maybe it's a different number. Because at least there's 1,000 here in Najaf al-Ashraf itself. So what they said is like they said, we'll find the most pious of the 1,000 in Najaf, and we'll tell him to do an a'mal. He says, what a'mal? He says, we'll take the most pious in Najaf al-Ashraf, and we'll tell him that go to Masjid Sahla, fast for 3 days, spend your whole night in Masjid Sahla, and all you are to do is tawassul to Imam Zaman. And inqita', cut away from everything except him. Fast for those days and pray that you can see him. And when you see him, and we know that you are the most biggest abid and the purest person out of all of us, when you see him, ask him, what is the real number? Is it 313? Isn't that very little? So that we can then tell Sayyid Abul Hasan Isfahani. So they all agreed, and one of the students of Sayyid Abul Hasan mentioned this, said they all agreed that there is one person in Najaf al-Ashraf, one individual, who is the greatest. We all know. We all accept that this person, his faith, his belief, his practices, his akhlaq, his ibadat is the greatest. He spends all his nights in ibadat, we know. So they came to him and they said, can you do this for us? Do this a'mal and ask him. He said, no, I'm not the greatest and there are others. They said, no. We all accept here in Najaf al-Ashraf, the consensus of all of us, that out of these 1,000 that we think are the greatest, you are number one. He said, okay, there's a good intention behind this, I'll do so. So he travels, he walks from Najaf al-Ashraf to Kufa. And the first day goes by. And he spends the whole day doing tawassulat, ibadat, crying out to Sahib al-Asri wal Zaman. Because as I have said before, if you shout out someone's name that is in this hall, will they reply? Of course they'll reply. And so if you shout out to Sahib al-Asr, he won't reply? Me and you, we have this. You call out someone's name 5 times, 10 times. Even if he has bad akhlaq, he will reply to you eventually. Cry out 10 times to Imam Mehdi, he won't reply to you? He says, I was calling out, the next day came, the third day came. He says, when the third day came, it was the time to do iftar. I was very tired. So I prayed my Salatul Maghrib and I had gone into sajda. When I was in sajda, I was so tired that I fell asleep, or some ulama say he saw a vision. He says, I was in a certain place and I met a person. I said, where am I? What is this? The person says, this is the city of Sahib al-Zaman. As we know, Dua al-Nudba mentions that Imam Hasan al-Askari salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi had made the Imam promise that you won't stay in one place. So in Nudba we say, Abi Radwa, am Ghayriha, am Dhi Tuwa. Are you in the mountains of Radwa, in the mountains of Dhi Tuwa? Where are you? We know that he travels a lot. In this vision that this person saw, he said, I saw this place. I asked the person, he said, this is the place where the Imam is staying. So I said, can I see Sahibul Asr? He said, yes, you can see Sahibul Asr. So they went into a room and they made him sit there. When he sat in this room, the person says, I will ask the Imam if he wants to see you at this moment, and then you will come and see him. The person came back and said, the Imam is asking, are you married or are you not married? Now this doesn't mean that only a married person can see Sahib al-Zaman. There's a reason behind this. He says, are you married or not married? He says, I'm not married. So Sahib Zaman has said, first get married, so complete your faith. Now there's a reason behind this. Someone who's not married, don't think you want to see Sahib Zaman. Of course, when a person gets married, completion of faith. Completion of faith is when a person gets married. Says the Imam says, complete your faith first. Get married, then he will see you. He says, oh, I don't know anyone in this city. How can I get married? I don't know anyone. The first time I've come here. He says, no. Sahib Zaman says, across the road there's a house. Tell them, the man will open the door, tell him that Sahib Zaman has ordered that you give your daughter to me in marriage. He says, okay. He went there, he knocks on the door, the person opens, yes, he tells him. He says, no problem, come. Now this person doesn't even want to get married to this person. He doesn't care what she looks like, whatever. He says, I want to just do the nikah, the aqd, so that then I can go and see my imam. The imam has told me I'll do the aqd, I'll see the imam. He says, I did the aqd. She was covered in full hijab. Two people recited the aqd. And then I stopped. Now my intention was what? To see Sahib Zaman. But I stopped. And I said, let me see what she looks like. She removed one of the coverings of her face and I stopped there. And he says, I never saw someone more beautiful in my life. And as I'm looking at her face, and I thanked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a knock came on the door. And the knock on the door was what? Oh individual, Sahib Zaman is ready. He said, I said, can he wait a few minutes? I'm just looking at my wife. He says, okay. He came back 10 minutes later. Sahib Zaman is calling you. He says, again, I want a few minutes. The third time, when that man came and said, Sahib Zaman is calling you, and he said a few minutes, he then woke up and found himself in sajda. He says, I began crying and I ran back to Najaf al-Ashraf. And when the people of the students of Sayyid Abu al-Hasan came to me and they said, what happened? Did you see him? What is the real number? Did Sayyid Abu al-Hasan make a mistake? He said, first tell me, am I the best of all of you? Yes. Am I the best of all of the 1,000? Yes. He told them the story. Then they realized a 313 has a very different quality according to others. In his heart will only be Imam Zaman. Allah says, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ. We will test you with loss of wealth and your children and fear and hunger to see whether in your heart is it more important that wealth remains and these other things remain, or is it in your heart only Sahibul Asri wa Zaman remains? When a person is therefore patient, Allah says, Bashir as-Sabirin, give good news of the dhuhur of the Sabirin, those who are patient and only had Sahib Zaman in their hearts. Because a poet very beautifully said, he said, I thought when you would come, Ya Sahib Zaman. He says, I thought when you would come, I would tell you all of the tragedies of my heart, but then I realized when you will be in front of me, what tragedy will remain in my life? These are the people that the Quran says, Sabirin. And therefore this verse, we were told, was not just general to all mu'mineen, was specific to those mu'mineen of ghaibah. What we also understand about this verse, that the verse then says, that those are the people that are sabirin, are those that say, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And on these people are the salawat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes people ask, where is the proof that I can say alayhi salam after the names of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam? Sometimes people say you can say radiyallahu an and these things, but how can you say salawatullahi alayhi? This verse was used by ulama to prove that I can say salawatullahi alayhi, salamullah alayhi. Why? Because the verse says when people are tested and they are patient and they say inna lillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then sends his salawat on them. Who has been tested more by Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, and who is more patient than Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam? In other words, this verse proved that the salawat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are on Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. The verse says these are those that say inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Why? Because the philosophy of inna lillah is what? The philosophy of inna lillah is very strongly related to the philosophy of imtihan and problems and trials and tests from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Take the example, I don't know about here in Canada, but you go to a bank. Normally in the UK and things, the bank, there's a person sitting behind the desk, the cashier. So a person says, I saw once the cashier was sitting, and a person came and gave him $10,000, and his face is the same. Then a person withdrew $5,000, his face is the same. A person deposited $100,000, his face is the same. Someone took from him 20 grand, his face is the same. So I came to him afterwards, I said, are you a human being? Do you live in this world? He says, what do you mean? Someone gives you money, you're not happy. Someone takes money away from you, you're not sad. He says, what type of individual are you? Is it my money that I would be happy when it was given to me? Or sad when it was taken away? This is the philosophy of inna lillah, that everything belonged to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the first place. If Allah gives it to me, I thank Allah that He gave it to me. If He takes it away, it belonged to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the first place. That's why Allah links these two things of imtihan, loss of wealth, loss of life, loss of your fruits, and inna lillah. I didn't own these children of mine in the first place. I didn't own that wealth. It was all owned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we then look at this statement, inna lillah, and the sabirin mentioned in this verse, the greatest example of the sabirin, those that are patient, and the first to say this statement, inna lillah, was who? Was Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam. Amirul Mu'mineen is the first to say inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And of the greatest sabirin, and of the greatest people to be tested, because it's enough trial in this world to know that when you pass away, they will massacre both of your sons. Of the other people who were sabirin and said inna lillah, we all know who said inna lillah on the 10th of Muharram. That he went forward 7 times and backward 7 times, and he would mention this statement. Why? Because Abu Abdullah knew when they gave me Abu Ali Akbar, when they gave me Ali Asghar, when Allah gave me Abu al-Fadl Abbas, I never owned them. They belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when Allah wants to take them away, Allah takes them away. This verse also said, and the loss of fruits. What was meant by the loss of fruits? We are told, لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ ثَمَرَةٍ. For everything there is a fruit, and the fruit of the heart, وَثَمَرَةُ الْفُؤَادِ, al-walad is the son and the youthful son. Allah tests in different ways. One of the greatest ways He tests is by taking away a youthful son from someone. And that's why one of the greatest tragedies on the heart of Abu Abdullah was when he loses his youthful son. One of the greatest tragedies for Abu Abdullah is when he loses Abbas, Abu al-Fadl Abbas. But at the end of the day, he would say, he belonged to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Abbas didn't belong to me, he belonged to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so, Bashar as-Sabirin, Ya Allah, what good news you gave to Abu Abdullah, that you made Abu Abdullah alive for eternity. And what bashara you gave to Abu al-Fadl Abbas, that you made Abu al-Fadl Abbas flag and his hands alive for eternity. That his generosity and the way in which he dealt with his brother is something that can never be forgotten. They say that Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam once, the hadith mentions that he had the craving and the desire to eat a certain type of meat. I mentioned yesterday how Ali ibn Abi Talib would live like the poorest of society. And when Amir al-Mu'mineen would want something, he would very rarely had a desire in his heart. Sometimes you want certain things, he would very rarely ask someone for this desire. Imam Hassan says it took him 1 year to tell us. After 1 year, he said that, actually, I've been wanting to eat this type of meat. So Hassan Mustafa was so happy that my father has asked me. So I ran and got the meat, and we cooked it in a certain way, and it was presented in front of Ali ibn Abi Talib. And when it was placed in front of Ali ibn Abi Talib, a person came, is there anyone for this sa'il of Allah? Is there anyone to grant this person? Ali ibn Abi Talib says, give this away to that person. But the point of this story is what? Ali ibn Abi Talib in his life would never request something. He would never request anything in his life. The only thing he requested in his life was Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. What he requests from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, someone who would wait 1 year even for these things. He says, I request, Ya Allah, to give me a son who will protect my Hussein on the 10th of Muharram. The loyalty of Abu al-Fadl Abbas is something that we cannot understand. Because when it came to the time of the death of Imam Hassan Askari alayhi salam, and the ghaiba of Sahib al-Zaman, historians mentioned that Imam Hassan Askari told the women in the house. He said, come out from the back door of the house, and there will be a person waiting there to take you to safety. The women said, we left our door from the back to be safe from the Abbasids, and we saw a man is there waiting for us. And he took us to safety, and we asked him, oh man, who are you? He says, don't you know I am from the progeny of Abbas, and our father had made us promise that as long as you are alive, the progeny of Abbas shall always take care of the progeny of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Because the only time when Hussein says my back was broken is when he picks up the hands of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. And that masa'ib, which is the most severe, or one of the most severe on the heart of Sahib Zaman, is to see the body of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas laying on the grounds of Karbala. أحسن الله لك العزايا والعزايا صاحب الزمان يا صاحب الزمان. We send our condolences for the tragedy of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. Imam Sajjad says on the day of Qiyamah, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas will have such a status that all of the shuhada will wish they had the status of Abbas. And they say Abbas was ذو بصيرة من ربه. When Amir al-Mu'mineen was on his deathbed, historians narrate that when Amir al-Mu'mineen is on his deathbed, he told all of his children to surround him, and he would tell each one to come and give their hands to Hassan al-Mujtaba, that after I die, you will give allegiance to Al-Hassan. And so all of the sons of Ali come and give allegiance to Hassan. As this is happening, Ali says, I can hear a woman crying in this house. Ali said, who is crying? They said, Ya Abul Hassan, that is al-Baneen al-Arba'a. al-Baneen, why are you crying? She said, all of the sons gave their hands in the hand of Mujtaba, but not the hands of Abbas. Ali says, because Abbas' hands will only be in the hands of Hussein, and he calls them together in the hands of Abbas and the hands of Hussein. And that's why we are told when Bishr enters into Medina, and Zainab says, Bishr, tell people of Medina what happened. Bishr says, I entered into Medina, and I said, Ya Ahla Yathrib, la muqam lakum biha, قتل الحسين فأدمئي مدرار. He said, oh people of Medina, how will you stay in Medina now? Hussein has been killed, and tears flow down from my cheeks. Bishr says, I saw a woman standing there, her face was covered in light, and she had a child in her hand. And I asked the people of Medina, I said, who is this woman? They said, هذه al-Baneen al-Arba'a. This is al-Baneen. Bishr says, how will I tell al-Baneen that all four of her children have passed away? He says, Ya al-Baneen, أعظم الله لك الأجر بولدك Ja'far. Oh al-Banin, condolences on the death of your son Ja'far. Will you hear the reply of al-Banin? She says, La akhbirni an waladi al-Hussein. Why are you telling me about Ja'far? Tell me about my son Abu Abdullah. Then he says, Ya al-Banin, Azam Allah laki al-ajr biwaladiki Abdullah. She says, no, don't tell me about Abdullah. Akhbirni an waladi al-Hussein. Then he says, I said, Ya al-Banin, Azam Allah laki al-ajr biwaladiki Abil Fadl al-Abbas. When al-Banin hears the name of Abbas, the child in her hands fell on the ground, and she says, if Abbas is no longer alive, then I know my Hussein has left this world. Because when Abu al-Fadl comes on the morning of the 10th of Muharram, he says, I told Abu Abdullah, do you give me permission? Abu Abdullah says, as long as I am alive, Abbas, you have to stay with Abu Abdullah. And so the day continues. Abu al-Fadl says, I saw the body of Qasim and Aun and Muhammad, and I said, Ya Abu Abdullah, allow me to go. And Hussein would say, no, you are my standard bearer. You are the backbone of Hussein ibn Ali. And then one point comes when Abu al-Fadl hears one young daughter of Hussein calling out, Al-Atayash, Al-Atayash. Abu al-Fadl says, I went to Hussein. Abu al-Fadl says, I will not fight. Allow me to bring water for the children. Do you know the reply of Hussein? When Abu al-Fadl comes to Hussein for permission, Imam Hussein says, first you have to ask your sister Zainab al-Kubra. So he says, I went to Zainab and I began to ask permission from Zainab. Zainab says, Abbas, sit down, let me tell you something. Abbas said he sat down. She says, one day I was in Kufa with our father Ali ibn Abi Talib, and Ali said, in Kufa, ya Zainab, your hands will be in chains and you will be brought as a prisoner. Zainab says, I said to Ali, I have 18 brothers and one of them is Abbas. Then now Abbas, you have asked to go into the Maqtal. I know after you the hands of Zainab will be tied. And so Abbas said, with his standard in one hand and the container in the other hand, and as he goes he takes the water in his hand. He said, Ya nayabs min ba'd al-Hussein huni. He fills the container to go back to the tent. A person says, I was hiding behind a tree. I saw the son of Ali on his horse. I went behind him and I cut the hand of Abbas. And Abbas says, in qada'tu man yamini inni ma uhami abadan an dini. If you cut my right hand, Abbas will still never leave. Then a person came behind Abbas. He says, I cut the left hand of Abu al-Fadl, and the container would fall on the ground. And one person says, I shot the arrow in the eye of Abbas. A person once was reciting Masa'ib in the Haram of Abbas, and he mentioned this Masa'ib, and one of the ulama sitting there, he says, I fainted from this Masa'ib, and I told him, never recite this Masa'ib again. But then when I came into sleep, I saw my dream. Abu al-Fadl was there, and Abu al-Fadl says, why do you not want this Masa'ib to be mentioned? Because when someone has something in his eye, he will use his hands to remove it. But don't you know, I did not even have my hands, so I tried to remove it with my feet. Then Abbas, as he is going, A person says, I hit him on his head and he would fall on the ground. And Abbas came in the dream of one of the ulama. He says, mention the great Masa'ib of Abbas. He says, I mentioned that your hands were cut and there was an arrow in your eye. He says, no, tell the people when a person falls on the ground, they use their hands to protect them. But I did not have my hands and I fell on the ground. And I said, oh my master, Ya Hussein, my last salam. Hussein says, I rushed to the battlefield. I picked up the right hand and the left hand, and I said, Al-an inkasar dhari. Now my back is broken. And they say, Lamma qutil al-Abbas ban al-inkisar fi wajh al-Hussein. That when Abbas was killed, you could see the weakness on the face of Hussein. Hussein says, I got to the body of Abbas. I took the head of Abbas in my lap. Abbas moves his head onto the ground, and I took his head and placed it on my lap. Then again he moved it on the ground. I said, Abbas, allow your brother to keep your head in his lap. He said, I am thinking my head is in your lap. Which lap will be there for your head in a few hours? Then Abbas says, Ya Hussein, I have never asked for anything in my life, but when I came into this world, I saw you first with my eyes. And when I leave this earth, I wish to see you with my eyes for one last time. But one eye has an arrow and the other eye is filled with blood. And oh Hussein, I would have removed the blood from my eyes myself, but I do not have any hands. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون.